I sometimes question whether my father ever considered me to be his daughter or only an investment, a backup plan, something he might profit from when times were tough. Would I still have assisted him if I had known how it would turn out? Perhaps, perhaps not. What I do know, though, is that I will never again allow somebody to take advantage of me in that way. My father, who we'll name Henry Calloway, was everything to me as a child, not in the sense of doting dad, no cuddles or bedtime tales. The universe seemed to bend around him because he was everything, made by oneself, extremely ambitious, brutal. He was the type of man who could take over a room in 30 seconds. From a little business, he transformed Calloway and Sons Manufacturing into a sensation that made the business journals swoon. My dad expanded a third-generation business that my grandpa had started. He was proud of it, not his spouse, not his children, not me, of course. I was taught early on that love had conditions in our home. Performance was important to my father. Either you deserved your place or you didn't. For a period, Damien, my older brother, was the one who was anointed, the child of gold, destined to take the throne. His grooming was a front-row seat to my entire childhood. By the age of 12, he was having business breakfasts with his father. At 15, play golf with the board. Me? I was just background noise. Inconspicuous, courteous, and adorable. When I was 10 years old, I recall sitting at the dinner table listening to my father babble about how Damien will be the next visionary leader. I interrupted, naively optimistic, and asked, "What about me, Dad?" "Sweetheart, you'll do just fine on your own," he replied, laughing and ruffling my hair as if I were a golden retriever. "It's not necessary for women to own businesses. They are married into them." Everyone chuckled, even me, because you laugh to keep from crying when you're 10. I wanted nothing to do with Calloway and Sons by the time I was old enough to disprove him. I left, received a scholarship. I started my own financial consulting business. Without anyone's assistance, particularly his, I worked extremely hard and established myself. My father hardly gave me credit for my accomplishments. In the meantime, Damien burned and crashed in slow motion. As it happens, he was terrible at being a CEO and excellent at speaking like one. For years, Calloway and Sons had been losing money, but my dad wouldn't acknowledge it. He wasn't going to let reality destroy the fiction he had created about Damien. Then the phone rang. The morning of December was chilly. My phone rang while I was sipping my second cup of coffee. My dad responded, "Daisy, we need to talk. Don't be nice. Nothing personal, just business. This evening, stop by the house." It had been years since I had visited that house. It was a place where love had a cost and desire was money. The dining room appeared to be a battle room when I got there. A folder containing balance sheets and spreadsheets was put out in front of my dad, who was sat at the head of the table. My mother sat quietly next to him, wringing her hands. Damien was also present, spinning a whiskey glass as if it held the answers. My father wasted no time. "The business is having problems," he declared. I thought, "No shit. I need your assistance." At first, I remained silent. I simply picked up the papers and looked them over. Debt, declining income, erratic expenditure. I had underestimated how bad it would be. I felt sick to my stomach. "What amount are you requesting?" I asked, attempting to sound neutral. He gave me a direct glance. 2 million. I almost burst out laughing. 2 million? That type of money is not mine. He didn't flinch. "You have investors. Links. You are skilled in debt restructuring. You are capable of fixing this." Then suddenly it was evident. He needed a lifeline, not assistance. He asked me to put my network, reputation, and career at danger in order to preserve a business I had never worked for, a business that has always considered me only a contingency plan. I ought to have left. I ought to have told him to burn in hell. However, there was a part of me that wanted to disprove him a pitiful, wounded, 10-year-old part. I wanted him to finally see me and look at me, not as a last resort or a backup plan, as essential. I replied, "Yes." I worked every aspect throughout the course of the following 6 months. I brought in financial specialists, engaged in negotiations with creditors, convinced investors to change their minds. I even secretly contributed some of my own funds since I thought I could make it better. And what do you know? Yes, I did. Callaway and Sons was off life support at the end of the year. Although it wasn't flourishing, it was steady. And I had the hope that this time he would see me for who I truly was. Then, 2 weeks prior to Christmas, his attorney sent me an email, an updated will. I was midway through the evening when I opened it on my laptop while drinking wine. I went through the first page, then the second. My heart stopped. Everything had been rewritten by him. Damien was left in charge of everything, every darn thing. Nothing at all about me. No stock, no recognition, nothing. I seemed to have vanished from the world. I went back and read it. I assumed I must have overlooked something, a clause, a few footnotes. However, no, I remained only a shadow despite everything I had done. I had never worked for a family business as a temporary job. I drove to the house that evening, came rushing into his study. The papers were slammed upon his desk. Explain this. He hardly raised his head. He stated bluntly, "It's the way it should be," I snarled. "I saved your company." My name was on the line. I gave up everything. He gave his temples a rub. "Daisy, you'll be all right. You always are. This is what Damien needs. He is the way of the future." Slowly, I nodded. "Okay," I replied. I meant it, too. I turned and left after that. No further assistance. No further assistance. No more rescuing those who viewed me as nothing more than a tool. My telephone rang a week later. No hello, no regrets. Just the clipped, icy voice of my father. "My money is nowhere to be found." The last switch in me immediately flipped. Not anymore. Never again. I was expecting something when I hung up on him that evening. Anger. One more call. Perhaps, if I was lucky, an apology as well. However, the screen remained dark. Hours went by. Then a day. Next, 3. Nothing. It felt unsettling, like anticipating a storm that never materialized. The quiet itself became deafening, as if it were observing me, and I understood that he would not pursue me. He didn't consider it a loss when I left, only a small annoyance. A resource that was no longer available. His daughter wasn't me. My account was closed. I don't want to admit how much that realization affected me. I resumed my work as if nothing had occurred. Liv, my helper, noticed it very immediately. That Monday, with my schedule in hand, she knocked on my door. "Are you okay?" Gently, she inquired. "Yes," I said under false pretenses. "Just taking care of some family matters." Although she didn't press, she looked at me as if she realized that was an understatement. "Thank you for that." How was I meant to communicate my feelings to someone else when I still didn't fully comprehend them myself? The email started by Friday. Subject: let's use common sense. Callaway, Henry, of course. After a full minute of staring, I clicked. Daisy, although I can appreciate your distress, this goes beyond sentimentality. Family is family. Neither of us ignores the other. Give me a call. Father, I removed it. Another one after 3 days. Subject: you are not as big as this. Daisy, you are aware of how this operates. Your entire career has been based on your comprehension of risk and return. The investment in Callaway and Sons is long-term. You stabilized it, so why leave now? Damien is having trouble. You are needed by him, Father O. It was there. Damien is having trouble. He was, of course. He struggled constantly, with cash, with initiative, with life, and the cushion beneath his fall had always been me. Not now. So I answered, from Daisy Callaway, regarding, this surpasses you in size. I have no obligation to tidy up Damien's mess. It wasn't. Daisy, before I could question myself, I pushed submit. A week later, in the middle of a meeting, my assistant knocked on my office door. She appeared anxious. Your dad is here. In the conference room, everyone turned to face me. I blinked. What? In the lobby, he is. Claims that it is urgent. He did, of course. Every time he needed something, it was urgent. I got up and walked out to the lobby, after quickly apologizing to the boardroom. He was pacing close to the windows, attempting to appear unconcerned, yet exuding tension. The man was generally well-groomed, but on that particular day, something wasn't quite right. He had a loose tie, a little disheveled. It seemed as if the panic was beginning to seep through. When he heard my heels click, he turned. With a forced smile, he added, Daisy, it's good to see you. Is it? My arms were crossed, tight-lipped. He let out a breath through his nose. I came here not to fight. Then why, after ignoring all of the emails, would one suddenly show up at work? I would like to speak. I made a motion. Then speak. He paused, as if this wasn't the mental script he had practiced. At last, he stopped the act. The business is still having issues. Investors are becoming jittery. Damien is feeling overpowered. I arched an eyebrow. And you must return to us. We. As if I were still a component of the machine. As if I hadn't been deleted from the will and wasn't treated like a walking ATM. I had one sharp, humorless laugh. No. His expression tensed. This isn't about you, Daisy. It was there. The trip of guilt. He had employed the same playbook all my life. This concerns the workers. The individuals that depend on this business to provide for their families. Will you truly act in such a self-centered manner? I inhaled, kept his gaze fixed. I've saved it once already. My contribution was that. I owe you nothing at all. It hurt. It struck him in the jaw, as I could see. But he bounced back fast. That business was created with Damien in mind. You were aware of that. Yes. Yes, I did. However, there was a big difference between accepting it and knowing it. Even so, Damien came running to me when he lost it. Not the one that was selected. The last-minute idea. I gave a head shake. Then let Damien take care of it. I pivoted on my heel. Daisy, I glanced behind me. Dad, this conversation is over. I then turned to go. This time, for real. I thought he would strike back right away. His style was that. Remind me who had the power and push back forcefully. However, nothing appeared. Not immediately. Then I was leaving the office late one evening. In my peripheral vision, the city lights were a haze. My phone rang. Mom. That was unexpected. She didn't call very much. She was the kind that kept the peace and smoothed out wrinkles while hovering silently in the background. She didn't cause a stir. As the tide swelled, she simply remained silent. I replied, Daisy, she murmured. Are you occupied? I just got off of work. What is going on? She paused. It has to do with your dad. Damien as well, naturally. They're having difficulties, she stated. I understand that you and your father had a conversation, but this isn't just about him. The business is barely surviving. Your sibling is drowning. I squeezed my nasal bridge. Mom, she muttered. Please, Daisy, and for the first time in years, she sounded vulnerable. My mother had never lost her cool. Unflappable, even in the most trying circumstances. She was the stone fireplace always standing, always motionless if my dad was the fire. But she sounded afraid tonight. She remarked, He's not eating. He doesn't get much sleep. I'm concerned about him. I shut my eyes. Traditional. My dad knew, so he hadn't phoned again. He was no longer holding me. He was aware of my tender spots, though. He was aware that even if I wouldn't bend for him, I may for her. I inhaled deeply. I love you, Mom. However, I will not do this. Daisy. No, I answered more firmly. This is the trend. After he destroys everything with fire, you arrive to remove the ashes. You plead. You smooth everything out. He then leaves as if he hadn't lit the match. Quiet, I continued. I will no longer participate in it. I've already rescued him once, and in return, he cut me off like if I were expendable. She didn't dispute. Not immediately. Then, with scarcely a whisper, she said, It's not that easy, Daisy. It is, I said. It is, for once. Taking the wheel, I slid in. Beyond the glass, the street buzzed slightly, and the automobile was silent. Let Damien save him if that's what you want, Mom. He placed all of his bets on that person. She let out a deep exhale. I simply don't want this to cause me to lose my daughter. I felt a knot form in my throat. You won't, I remarked. However, I'm also not losing myself over this. Before she could continue, I hung up. I also didn't get any sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, but because I had quit cleaning up other people's mess for the first time in my life. Allow them to burn. I assumed the quiet would continue, that perhaps my boundaries had been heard for once, or appreciated, at the absolute least. However, I ought to have known better. When I checked my phone's news app a week after telling my mother I was finished, I saw it. Headline: The local business section's homepage. Third generation empire at risk. As Callaway and Sons face family conflict, I blinked. After that, read it once more. Naturally, the sources are anonymous. Not exactly anonymous, though. It was clear, even if the story skirted it without mentioning names. During a critical restructuring period, a family member with financial expertise had left, leaving investors unsettled and staff morale low. They failed to mention my name. They were not obliged to. The identity of the anonymous family member was obvious to anyone who knew me. With my phone still in my hand, I reclined. My coffee became chilly. I opened my texts after reading the essay twice. Already, messages were coming in. From a former college pal: Hey, are you the subject of this? From a previous customer: I just saw the news. If you need to get ahead of this, let me know. From my helper: Do you want me to begin vetting calls? Then a message from Damien: Since karma has a funny sense, just helping would have been better. I gazed at it, didn't reply immediately. My skin was crawling with rage, not angry, blazing, not explosive. It was a slow one, chilly, a strain behind the rib cage, the type that develops after someone stabs you in the back and then accuses you of causing the blood. This was not a leak of news. It was a well-planned hit, a campaign of public smears intended to put me in a difficult position, to humiliate me into repairing everything once more. It was also functioning. Around me, not on me. My inbox was a mess. Quiet questions were beginning to come from clients. Some of the meetings were rescheduled. I sent Damien a single message via typing back. Tell Dad that he had better be ready for the consequences if he wants to drag me through the mud. I sent it. I sat looking at the screen at my workstation, awaiting, anticipating a fight, a counter-argument, a danger. However, nothing appeared. It dawned on me then that he had nothing left. His threats had become meaningless, because I was no longer afraid of him. I wasn't the clinging daughter vying for his affection. Trying to keep everything together wasn't my job. I was finished. Liv knocked on my door the following morning, still wearing that hesitant look. She extended a note. This is your mother. I blinked. Once more, she lowered her voice and nodded. She appears to be exhausted. She did, of course. Liv should send her in, I said. After a minute, Mom entered my office as if she were entering a courtroom. She did not sit, didn't greet them. Your father is furious, she murmured, clutching her handbag as if it were supporting her. It nearly made me chuckle. When isn't he? It's different this time, she said hastily. He's speaking with attorneys. He wants to take you to court. I blinked. I apologize, what? She took a swallow. He believes you deceived investors, that you undermined the business by leaving. I shook my head and let out a deep exhale. Mom, that business was salvaged by me. It was stable when I walked out. The fact that it's currently crashing? Damien is to blame. Dad is to blame for that. I understand, she muttered. My dear, I am aware of that. I gazed at her. So, why have you come here? She glanced at the ground. Because even if you win, his filing could damage your reputation. I pointed to my phone, which was still open on the story. Mom, he has already attempted to destroy me. He gave the media access to a hit article. I don't believe he did it. Then, who? Damien? You? She winced. No. So, Mom, who? She didn't respond. Therefore, she was not required to. I reclined in my chair and experienced that well-known fatigue. Not at work, not from customers, from them. I refuse to be harassed, I declared firmly. Not by him, not by anybody. At last, she took a seat, as if her knees had given out. She muttered, I don't know what to do anymore. I gave my temples a rub. All my life, I had heard her say that, when I was reprimanded by Dad, when Damien blamed me for a vehicle accident, when I was consistently ignored. She was always unsure about what to do, as she never made the decision to. Mom, you have two choices, I murmured quietly. You can continue to stand up for him, continue to be his shield, continue to mend things so he never has to confront himself. I took a moment to process it. You can also leave, as I did. Her eyes were hazy as she gazed at me. I'm not sure how. And that was what separated us from one another. I knew. The cord was cut by me. She would never. I told him, I love you, but I won't help him with this. She got up. She wiped her eyes. Didn't say anything else. Simply left. The lawsuit never took place. Naturally, it didn't. Another bluff. A desperate guy pushing the boundaries of his authority. However, the blows continued. My bank sent me a fraud alert a few days later. My accounts had been attempted to be accessed. I recognized the person. It wasn't nuanced. An unknown device made multiple attempts to log in, the bank representative stated. You should update your security settings, but we've locked everything for the time being. I ought to have been incensed. But really, I was simply worn out. He now grasped at anything like an animal in a corner. Despite having little left in his hands, he continued to claw for control. Every password was altered by me, added all the layers of defense. All access was frozen. I then texted Damien one last time. Me, inform Dad that I will file charges if he ever accesses my money again. It took him half an hour to answer. Damien, I had no idea he would act in that way. I sneered. Me, you did. You allowed him to do so. I didn't anticipate a response. I also didn't receive one, because the genius had never been Damien. He was a pawn. It has always been. My mother called again the next week. However, she wasn't pleading this time. It trembled. Breathless, she continued. It's your father. He passed out. Everything around me froze for a moment. She claimed that they had hurried him to the hospital. His heart. The physicians are still in the dark. With my phone to my ear, I stood motionless in the center of my kitchen. And I came to a terrible realization. I had no feelings, not comfort, not remorse. Do not panic. Not melancholy, simply numb, because the first secretly understood what she was truly requesting, even in this moment. Return home. Come fix it. I made no hesitation at all. I muttered, keep me updated. She hesitated. Are you coming? I shut my eyes. No, Mother. I ended the call, and prepared to feel guilty. However, it never materialized, nothing but quiet. And perhaps that silence seemed like calm for the first time in my life. 3 days. The hush following the hospital call lasted that long. My mother missed 3 days' worth of calls. I spent 3 days feeling nothing at all while I stared at my phone. 3 days of completion. The communication arrived on the 4th day. My mother texted me. He's weak but stable. It was a warning sign, according to the doctors. He must drastically alter his way of living. Perhaps this will serve as the necessary wake-up call for him. I looked at it for a while. A warning? That was still her belief. I still believed that this man, who had lived his entire life manipulating, commanding, and pulling strings as if he were the puppeteer of our entire lineage, might simply wake up one day and change. He was himself. That was the issue. Don't worry, not growing older. I didn't respond. Another message that night. He's requesting you. It was there. Not he wants to make things right, nor he's sorry. He wanted me. This implied that he was in need of something. Once more. The only truth that remained in me was typed back. No. No justification. Don't apologize. Simply put, no. I didn't anticipate a reply. However, the bubbles emerged after a protracted interval. I get it, she wrote. Just give it some thought, Daisy. I didn't have to consider it. I had already considered that. For many years. Through every underappreciated achievement, every chilly dinner table, every time he referred to me as smart for a girl, every instance in which I was helpful but never appreciated, I had had enough. After a week, the business began to fall apart. His ego-driven empire, Callaway and Sons, was collapsing rapidly. It was a harsh article. Investors are running away. There will be layoffs, debt accumulation. Damien was completely overwhelmed and overburdened. And me? I was watching the sun rise through the trees while enjoying a cup of coffee on my patio. No calls. Don't use spreadsheets. No need to extinguish fires. I didn't feel victorious. However, I didn't feel bad either. I wasn't with them. It had never been. I thought Damien would call, to plead, to perform a Hail Mary at the last minute. However, all I received was a text. Damien, You achieved your goal. I gazed at it. I considered everything I could say. I then typed, me, Damien, no. I received what I was due. I meant it too. I woke up to an odd sight the following morning. Calm, not joy, not enthusiasm, nothing but silence. The kind that doesn't drag you down and rests in your chest. I had no crises in store for me. No dad standing ominously behind a door. No guilt to sort out. Just be quiet. A week went by. My mother then gave me another call. I nearly didn't respond. However, I did. She said, "Your father's house." I didn't answer. "He's different," she added. "Quieter. Since the hospital, he hasn't spoken much. He could want to see you, I believe." Her voice sounded uncertain, as if she knew what I was about to say. "But he refuses to inquire," she continued. "He wouldn't, of course. To ask was to confess weakness. Accountability. I'm sorry, and my father didn't do those things. Not right now. Even after his heart failed him. No," I exhaled. "Steady. Be calm," I replied. "And you want to know if I will?" "Quiet. Then, whisper soft. Would you?" It was the most impactful question she had ever asked. Not because I was at a loss for an answer. However, I did. Would I return to the residence? Would the man who removed me from the heritage I rescued sit across from me? Would I now look him in the eye and act as though any of it had any significance? No. "Mom," I said, "I refuse to." She took a deep breath. She said, "I thought you might say that." I took a swallow. "Are you planning to remain?" She took a while to respond. "I'm not sure how to get out," she finally uttered. And I was a little hurt by that. I understood what it took to get out. The price, the consequences of leaving without a blueprint, of starting over without anyone applauding you. I was aware of the ensuing hush. I was aware of the freedom, though. "That's up to you," I responded softly. The same way I made mine. A long pause ensued. Then she uttered it meaningfully for the first time in a long time. "Daisy, you are loved." And I believed her for the first time in a long time. "Mom, I also love you." Afterward, I hung up. I didn't talk to her again after that. Not that I desired it to be. However, some stories don't have happy endings. Some chapters simply end. I stood in front of my new house a month later. Not much. Not as big as I was used to. No countertops made of marble. No slick office. There are no conference rooms with glass walls. It was mine, though. This place has no recollections. Not a ghost. Have no expectations. Just space, sunlight, and new paint. I watched the world go by without me while sipping coffee on the porch. My phone then buzzed. Unknown figure. I didn't respond. Did not have to. My mother, father, Damien, and one of the family's facilitators, whomever they were no longer in my life. Not in this place. Not in me as I am now. For a while, I gazed at the television. Next, pressed the block button and grinned. Not because I had prevailed. Not the way they believed power, legacy, and control came with winning. The only way that mattered was how I won. I left. I was set free. I understand. I did not walk away for the last time 6 months ago. Ever since I quit taking calls. Ever since I ceased elaborating on myself. Since I came to the conclusion that tranquility was more valuable than allegiance to those who would never return it. I don't regret it either. Not even a moment. People discuss closure as if it were a gift from someone. I apologize, an admission, a last embrace at the storm's edge. But when no one else will, you have to choose yourself to find true closure. It's the silent choice to abstain from a conflict you didn't initiate. It involves not checking your phone while sipping your coffee in solitude. It's letting the fire burn and leaving barefoot, head held high, and without turning around. Sometimes I hear things. Through mutuals, old acquaintances, and rumors from places I no longer go to in my former life. To keep solvent, Damien sold off a portion of the business. Investors continue to run. Dad allegedly doesn't leave the house much after his second health crisis. He still has my mother, still faithful, as if it were exquisite china. The pile of ashes is still held together. In a slow, unavoidable way, it's tragic. However, it is no longer my tragedy. "But he's your father," others ask. sometimes with sincere concern and other times with condemnation. Do you not wish to correct the situation before it's too late? They are unable to comprehend. They won't. I would have to act as though I was mistaken in order to make things right. I wasn't, either. I had the naive, optimistic, desperate love of a child for my father. However, love that without respect rots. Without dignity, love deteriorates into rust. He didn't simply let me down. He taught me to have no expectations. Not seen, but useful. To arrive with solutions, but never require them. To get scraps and call it love. And when I eventually quit acting out the part he wrote for me, he attempted to ruin me. That isn't love. That's superior PR combined with control. So, no, I didn't return. Not when the business collapsed. Not when he fell ill one more. Not when he called my name out at last, like if it were still a magic spell that could make everything well. I am not a spell, for that reason. I am not a bandage. In his story, I'm not the devoted understudy. I am now the author. I created a brand new tale. Keep quiet. Sincere, da mine. I've reduced the size of my work. I genuinely enjoy consulting for clients. No more suit-clad sharks shaking my hand as if they were vying for it. It feels like everything I've ever wanted, even though my home office has poor lighting and barely living plants. No need to prove anything. You don't have to save the day. No games. Only room. I don't discuss my family very often. Not because I'm keeping it a secret. However, I've stopped bleeding from the wounds that keep popping up. And whenever I feel the want to check in to see whether anything has changed, I remind myself of this. I was only missed when they were in need. Never in my life. Not for me. That isn't a partnership. A transaction, that is. And I no longer do those. Recently, I ran across a man I known since I was a kid. One of those longtime family friends who used to give Damien a pat on the shoulder and say that I would make a wonderful wife in the future. He appeared taken aback by my presence, claimed that I had changed in appearance. Lighter. He remarked, "You speak like someone who left a fire behind." I grinned. "Yes," I said to him, "and I will not return for the ashes." He made no more inquiries. That pleased me. I'm not sure if my dad is still living. I'm not sure whether he still portrays me as a letdown, or if he has rewrote history to paint himself in the victim role. It's probably the latter, but it makes no difference. I no longer lived in his interpretation of events. I came up with my own conclusion. It also lacks a boardroom, or treachery, or pleading to be seated at a table that was never intended for me. My conclusion is brief. It's truthful. Slow mornings, peaceful evenings, and at last, enjoying the person I see in the mirror are all part of it. Peace is my ending, and that's sufficient for the first time in my life.